Hello and welcome to or welcome back to my channel. My name is Marin and here you will find a little beauty, a little books, and a little teaching content. So if that sounds like something you might enjoy, I would love for you to subscribe and stick around and join me in my little corner of YouTube. Today's video is going to be my March reading recap where I will take you through all 13 books that I read during the month. So let's go ahead and get into the video. To start off, I'm going to go ahead and recap how I did with the month-long version of the Final Book Support Group, which had a month-long readathon in March. If you are not familiar with the Final Book Support Group, it is hosted by Steph Loves, and it is all about finishing series books. So because this was a month-long version, she had created different cabins because the whole readathon is like camping themed, and I chose the Wolf's Tooth cabin. So here is the little graphic with the prompts. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by just talking about the books that I read for those prompts, and then we'll go ahead and get into ranking them from my least favorite to my favorite. The first prompt for the Wolf's Tooth, and actually all of the cabins, was to read a final book, and for that I chose Mouse 2 by Art Spiegelman. If you are unfamiliar with this series, this is a biography about his father Vladik's life during the lead up to World War II and his internment in Auschwitz. So the second installment really focuses on his time spent in Auschwitz. I would highly recommend these graphic novels. They are impactful, kind of just horrifying. The artwork, the art style rather, that he chose just kind of really drives things home. I would really recommend. There's a reason people are banning them all across the US, so check them out. But I did give this one 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. Then the next prompt was to get a book based on a random number generator. So I randomly generated all of the books on my next in series shelf on Goodreads. And the book that came up was Demon in the Wood by Leigh Bardugo. This is the little prequel to the Grishaverse, which focuses on the Darkling's childhood. So read that one as well, and that actually finished the Grishaverse series for me. So yay for that. Next, we had a book with a dark cover, and for that I chose Kith by Holly Black. This is the second in her YA Fairy series, where we are following a girl who lives in a town. She has a group of friends, but she finds out that her mother is actually part of the Fae, and her grandfather, who is like in charge of this group of Fae, not really the king, but just in charge, has some not so great plans for the city that she lives in. And the second book kind of talks about that. Didn't love this. The art style is not my favorite, but I did read it. I will finish the third book just to cross the series off, but that was my choice for dark cover. And then for a small book, I chose the 8th book in George O'Connor's Olympian series, which is Apollo the Brilliant One. Each of these focuses on a single god or goddess. Apollo's story was told via the 9 muses, and what each muse represents is what determined the story that they shared about Apollo's life. So really enjoyed that one as well. And then the last prompt was to read a book that was wild and adventurous. So I waited until the end of the month to see which book would fit that the best, and I decided to go with Finlay Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead, which is the second book in Elle Cosimano's Finlay Donovan series. And in the first book, you're introduced to Finlay. She is a romantic suspense writer who gets herself into a mess because someone overhears her speaking to her agent and believes that Finlay is a contract killer. So the series kind of spins out from there. So the second book focuses more on what happened in the first book, so obviously I'm not going to spoil it, but I did enjoy it. Okay, now let's go ahead and just do my rankings. As you know, I take it from my least favorite to my favorite. I just talked about 5 of the books, so I won't discuss those again, but I will give you little like one-line synopses for each of these other books that I didn't talk about because your girl didn't vlog during March because I came down with really bad sinus congestion and just really didn't feel like picking the camera up. So we're going to try to roll through these as quickly as I can. So my least favorite book coming in at number 13 was Kith by Holly Black. Already talked about it. I gave this one 3 stars. At number 12 was The Haunted Bridge, which is the 15th, I believe, Nancy Drew book. And this focused on Nancy, who was spending some time at a resort with her father and her friends Bess and George. To everyone's surprise, Nancy is brilliant at golf, despite never having golfed before in her life. And there is a mystery involving some jewel thieves that her father is trying to track down. I also gave this one 3 stars. At number 11 was Classified Material by Allie Carter. This is book 4.5. It's a novella in the Gallagher Girls series. I wanted to read this one because I've heard that it's a good segue into book 5. This was really nothing spectacular. At the end of book 4, Cammie takes off on her own, and the little novella is detailing her friend's reaction to that. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. Maybe it will be more important like as the series goes on, but I didn't really think it stood up very well on its own personally. At number 10 is The Whispering Statue, which was the 14th Nancy Drew book by Carolyn, Keene. I think I forgot to mention that before. In this one, Nancy, Bess, and George are at another summer resort where they are trying to locate this mysterious statue that goes missing. There is some things about art thieves, fraud, all kinds of crazy stuff. And in this book, because in every book Nancy has a random talent that you've never heard of before, Nancy is fantastic at sailing. So just throwing that out there, I like to kind of keep track of her new talents in each book. But I also gave this one 3 stars. Coming in at number 9 is Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH by Robert C. O'Brien. We are following Mrs. Frisby. She is a little mouse. Her husband Jonathan died earlier, like before the book takes place, and Mrs. Frisby has an emergency because her son Timothy has come down with pneumonia, and she needs to try to figure out how to keep her family safe while not being able to move him from his home, because typically mice move from their winter home to their summer home, but her winter home is in a farmer's garden, and the farmer is getting ready to start plowing, which obviously spells disaster for the mice. So she enlists these rats, and there is a history between her husband Jonathan and these rats. This is a sci-fi book because we have some medical experimentation on said rats, and I enjoyed it. It wasn't anything spectacular. I'm giving it 3 stars. I liked it. I'm glad to have finally read it, and it's also nice to actually read a book that was the inspiration for a movie that I had watched several times when I was younger. So 3 stars for this one. At number 8, we have Delirium by Lauren Oliver. This is a dystopian book wherein our main character, Lena, lives in a world where love is considered a disease, and at 18 you are cured, except before her 18th birthday, Lena meets Alex, and she falls in love with him. And now we have a series that's going to take off from that first book. So I did enjoy this one. I'm giving it 3.5 stars. I felt like it was a pretty good start to the series. I'm going to read the little novella that's next, which is called Alex, which is his point of view. And then I'm going to give book 2 a go and see if this is something that I want to continue to read. But I did enjoy it. This is typically not my genre. I'm not a dystopian fan necessarily, especially not old school dystopian. But yeah, I enjoyed this decently enough, and I will continue reading the series. At number 7, we have Apollo the Brilliant One by George O'Connor, which I already mentioned earlier, and I did give this one 4 stars. At number 6 is Demon in the Wood by Leigh Bardugo. Again, I talked about it already. I also gave this one 4 stars. At number 5, we have The Night Swim by Megan Goldin, which I did not realize was the start of a series, so I did enjoy this one a lot. I'm giving it 4 stars. We're following a podcaster named Rachel. She is following a in real-time trial, a rape trial in this small town, and while she is in town for this trial, she is contacted by the sister of a girl who died like 20 years before. The sister knows that her older sister was actually killed, and she did not commit suicide, which is like the generally accepted story, I guess. And so Rachel is trying to also solve this older crime. So I did really enjoy this. Would highly recommend the audiobook because you have the podcast elements in there, which I really enjoyed. And again, I gave this one 4 stars. At number 4, we have the second Finlay Donovan book, Finlay Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead by Elle Cosimano. Already talked about it. I also gave this one 4 stars. Coming in at number 3 is The Upstairs Room by Joanna Reese. This is a biography about a girl, Annie is the name that she went by, who grew up in the Netherlands during World War II. Her family is Jewish, so she and her older sister Cindy have to be hidden away in an upstairs room on a remote farmhouse, and this is her story of what happened. I really, really enjoyed this one. I'm giving it 5 stars. It is written for children, so some of like the horrors of the Holocaust are slightly glossed over, but like there's some mention of what actually was going on, and I just really liked this book a lot. It made me cry towards the end. I would recommend this. This is technically the first in a series. I don't know if I will read the second book, but this one was a winner. It was on my 23 in 2023 list, and I really, really enjoyed it. Coming in at number 2 is Mouse 2, A Survivor's Tale, and Here My Troubles Began by Art Spiegelman, which I again already talked about. Really enjoyed this one. Enjoyed is probably not the right word, but I found it very impactful, very important to read, and I did give it 5 stars. And then my top book of the month was actually my buzzword pick, which was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. This follows a witch named Mika who is contacted by a man named Ian because he needs her to come train up these 3 little witches that they are keeping hidden away from the world. There is a whole rule about how witches are not supposed to come together and spend time together, so Mika is like breaking that rule. We've got found family, a grumpy sunshine romance, some twists and turns, mysteries, things that really surprised me towards the end, and I really enjoyed this one, and I gave this one 5 stars. This was easily my favorite book of the month. I really enjoyed this. It has been compared to The House in the Cerulean Sea. I actually liked this one more than that one, so, you know, your mileage may vary, but I did really enjoy this. Definitely my favorite of the month. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go over some reading stats. So in March, I read 13 books. 6 of them were physical books, 3 of them were ebooks, and 4 of them were audiobooks, for a total of 2,812 pages read, which is pretty good, considering that I think in February I only read 5 books. So we definitely did better than February. And in terms of this series, because it was the Final Book Support Group's readathon, let me go ahead and just track some series things, because the only book that was not a series book was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. All the rest of these were series books. So I completed 2 series with Mouse 2 and then also Demon in the Wood. Even though it's technically a prequel, it was the last book that I needed to read. I continued 5 series and I started 4 series, but I have no intention to continue with 2 of those. That would be The Upstairs Room and Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH. I'm, as of right now, considering those DNF'd in terms of the series, but that is kind of my overall stats. So very pleased with the reading I was able to get done in March. I apologize for the lack of vlogging. As I said, I got sick and things just were not in a good place for me to be filming. So hopefully I can do better in April. We'll cross our fingers and see how it goes. Now, before I sign off this video, we're gonna go ahead and do a tiny little book haul because I do have 2 books that I picked up during the month of March. So if you watched my 2023 goals video, which I'll link up above, you will know that I am on a book no-buy for 2023 with 2 exceptions. The first is obviously pre-orders that I'd placed in 2022, and then I'm also continuing my book of the month subscription. So let's go ahead and talk about those books. First, we're gonna start with the one that I pre-ordered, and this is a chonker, y'all. So it is A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This is the prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree, which I have not read, but is on my 23 and 2023, and I plan on reading during the summer when I have a little bit more time to like really sit down with it. But I did pick this one up. The cover is absolutely gorgeous. I really like the cover, and this is a fantasy book. So fantasy, like actual legit fantasy, is not typically my thing, but I have heard very good things about Priory, so I went ahead and picked this one up as well. Hopefully I can get to both of them this year, but we will play that by ear because she's very thick. But yes, this was the book that I had pre-ordered, or a book that I had pre-ordered, and it did come in March. And then my book of the month pick for March was Wayward by Amelia Hart. This one was actually like, I guess, a big seller, for lack of a better word, for book of the month, because this took me a bit to get to me, or it took a bit for this to get to me. Can't even talk. But this is a magical realism book. We're following 3 people, one in 2019, one in 1619, and one in 1942. It says, weaving together the stories of 3 extraordinary women across 5 centuries, Wayward is an astonishing debut and an enthralling novel of female resilience. But I believe it's magical realism, so very much looking forward to reading this. I'm hoping to get to this soon because it sounds really good. But yes, those 2 are the 2 books that I picked up in March. And that brings us to the end of this video. I tried to go as quickly as I can. Hopefully I wasn't going too fast, but I didn't want this video to be forever long. So if you enjoyed, please leave me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel if you would like to see more from me. And I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.